So the the scene opens up on a dank cobblestone alley. There's it's a low angle, kind of like a worm's eye view, but kind of stretching out towards the end of the alley where we see some light. And there's a sound of like footprints or footsteps going back and footprints making noises. There's a sound of footsteps going back and forth. There's a bit of foot traffic. It's nighttime. We see the flicker of lantern light as it's kind of bathing the end of the alley with this kind of shifting shadow effect. And as we stop for a moment, we hear the sound of someone kind of lightly tapping a drum. They're just kind of like running, kind of like a finger run along the drum, just kind of giving a little bit of a rhythm, a little percussive resonance that's kind of thumping its way, kind of creeping its way within the alley, the stone of the alley, and the walls on either side. And as the sound continues, the camera moves forward down the alley, and we see bringing into focus. It's been kind of blurry, but up until now we see focused the people kind of going back and forth. We see a group of individuals, a dragonborn with a kobold that's kind of riding on their shoulder, with a half orc and a half orc and an elf that are walking by. And as we follow them for a moment, we see to the right, they've gone from right to left, but over on the right hand side we see like kind of shadows across the street, peering out of an alley, and the graying face of an undergnome, Spurbellum, an undergnome, we'll just call him that, peeking out of the alley and kind of watching. He looks over his shoulder, whispers something, and then looks back and continues to watch the four continue down the road. But then he ducks back in, and we try and follow him because we're curious, who is this guy? And so we go over and we follow him towards the alley. But unfortunately, the alley's empty. This individual has disappeared. So we pause and we think for a moment, where could they have gone? And we start to hear music in the background, kind of like a dull, distant thumping, and it's in tune with that drum beat that we were hearing earlier. And as we give up on this site, the screen goes black, and we hear footsteps again, but this time it's cautious footsteps. As the screen comes back up and we see our group, we're looking over the shoulder of our party of heroes, our heroic maestros, our beatific bards, as they are looking into the room of Palathoria Benetara, or someone known as the Pale, and looking at the words that are scrawled onto the wall underneath, flapping. There's like these flapping sheet music and other drawings and stuff like that. They're kind of scattered along the wall, but underneath all that, we do see the lyrics of that song we saw earlier. And we hear that kind of ghostly echo of music that we heard from the door when Anghyseinedd.
Anghyseinedd.
Darn it.
I got it right.
And I've broken the game. I almost had it. But
game is ruined. Everybody, let's just go home.
Restart. Forget it. Just grenade down. Respawn.
Rocks fall, everyone dies.
That's right. Everybody roll initiative. So Anghyseinedd saw this resonance. He was able to draw this resonance out of the door, and that's kind of how we hear this music, is this kind of like ghostly echo of this song. And so who's closest to the wall right now studying that music? Who's the one that's kind of taking the lead there?
I would definitely be taking the lead on that.
Okay. All right.
I would definitely be taking the lead on that. I'm thinking, was that all you needed to know? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that totally works. And and again, kind of this wonky style that I have is if there is an opportunity that you think that you want to kind of take a little bit of the narrative and draw it out and move forward with something that you think is a good idea, go for it. I'm totally open for it, and if I feel I need to rein it in, I'll rein it in. No worries. So all right. So Anghyseinedd is kind of close to the wall, and you're studying that music. So who's so who's next? Who's got the the next kind of like step of looking at things? You know, what are they doing?
I'm still pretty spooked by all this, but I know a couple things or two about ghosts, so I can give a bit of a. Do I have detect magic? Dang it! I don't.
Did you title it something else?
No, it wouldn't have been these titles. Let me see. What have I got in my? What have I got in my pockets?
What's in my pockets?
Yeah.
What's in my pockets?
And then there was also kind of like a bit of a history that you kind of drew in from your culture as well when investigating the song.
Yeah, with that Arcana check.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, as you're kind of looking at that, just to kind of remind the audience of the scene that we're dealing with, the room here is it's relatively small. It's you know, it's got enough room here for a dresser, and it's got a bed, a decent bed. There's a couple of places for, you know, pillows and cushions, and in the center of the room there's that symbol that's been drawn on the floor with candles that have looks like they've probably been recently lit, because you can see, you know, they have, you know, fresh wax that's on there. And then with the what do you call it, the temperature in here is kind of like being in a real cozy blanket, like with a fire going, and there's no fire in here, but it's just warm. It's super warm, and it gives the feeling of coziness, but it almost borders on oppressiveness when you're in here.
Vyraxa's pretty content in this room. She's liking the heat.
That works.
This is very comfortable for her.
Cool. Or warm. All right. So who's
Well, so she may be. Let's clarify. I'm comfortable in the room as far as temperature goes, but I'm still very uncomfortable being in someone else's room, because again, like we talked about last time, I would not want anyone coming into my space uninvited.
mm-hmm.
So I'm hesitant to really poke around very much, because it's making me uncomfortable.
Sure.
What was your character's name again?
Vyraxa.
So Skaud goes up to Rex, like, opens like, "Hey, what do you think's in those drawers over there?"
I most certainly don't know, and neither should you. No,
I am probably already digging through those drawers.
and so I'm the kind of, you know, although I'm looking, because again we've agreed to do this even kind of over my objections here, but we obviously need to find something that will direct us to where Pale might be, and that music is still the resonance that we found in the door is still kind of ringing in my head, and I'm continuing to think about what I may know about that music, the fact that it's so ancient, and any sort of connections that might draw for me. That's kind of where my attention is, much more introspective than studying, you know, the details of the room.
Right.
Now, is the music actually a physical object that I'm holding? Technically?
It's at this stage. It's a. It is a. I believe when we were talking about it in the first episode, I believe it is scrawled onto the wall. So it's. I mean, it is a physical object, but it's on the wall. So.
You need a.
So can I
drywall knife?
So can I am I allowed to cast I'm trying to think. Can I roll an investigation check to check and see if I can see anything further in this room?
Oh, Scott and I have already rolled investigation.
Oh,
so.
and I didn't look at that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I heard the little dice chirp as the audience, I'm sure, also heard. So I flipped our video over to take a look at Roll20, and I see that Skaud has a proud 22 in his investigation, and Rigo a 17 for theirs. Not too shabby. So Skaud, I'll start with you. Unless you guys are working together, is there something in particular that you're looking for?
I was looking at papers, tables, just for something that says Thursday go to so and so.
That is
think as
a
a-
map
you think as a
leading
GM
exactly
that I
where
would
we
do
need to
that?
go.
Do you think as a GM I'd make it that easy? Oh my goodness. You're,
Or
I'm just kidding.
maybe something that says, "Oh, she's always going to this place."
Yeah,
to
no,
eat or something.
that's a perfectly good
Take out boxes.
perfectly good set of information there.
Calendar with all of her schedule.
Yeah, no, exactly.
These are private rooms. So.
So yeah, so I think that, and then Rigo, let me just kind of bring this in for you, or from you as far as how are you looking for things? I mean, you've obviously got a different perspective on a goody many things, but what does it look like when you're investigating something?
Probably not nearly as dignified. A lot of just rummaging. I don't really care too much
Feathers
about.
flying.
Well, the cool thing is that you've got these like these talons, right, on your on your digits. So I mean, you could be like this, just kind of like scratching and moving things away, or you could be shredding things. I mean, how careful or non-careful are you when you do this?
Not like I'm not like actively tearing things apart, but I'm also like just kind of like
Nope.
I'll like shoving. I'll just like shove a thing aside. I'm looking mainly for any like if there was any active necromantic activity in here.
Okay. All right. So you're working off of, from last episode, you're working off of the Arcana check that you worked with. Did you end up finding if you have Detect Magic as part of your spell?
I do not have Detect Magic.
Okay. All right. So, I think, so let's do this. So Skaud, starting with you. For your research, you've been able to, you found a couple of things here. Number one is that as you're maybe, I don't know, maybe you kind of started your search like at the wall with Anghyseinedd as he's looking at the lyrics and studying them, and maybe looking for a way to bring the lyrics with him, maybe copying them down, that sort of thing. You're seeing the scrolls that are kind of like pinned to the wall, that sort of thing. They're kind of, they're flapping and they're moving around and stuff. But one of them in particular, you're cluing in on something first. That why are they moving? There's not really a breeze in here. But they kind of move like there's a breeze kind of moving from right to left. That's just kind of like causing my hand's probably not matching what I'm saying right to left, but from your right to the left side, you're seeing that it's just kind of like there's this breeze that ever so often just kind of moves through and causes the papers to stir that have been pinned to the wall. And one of them in particular you see has a drawing on the front. It's just like a sketch, like not a real rough sketch, but on the back side of it you see lyrics, or at least a poem, the structure, stanzas, that sort of thing. So you've found that. Now, as you're looking, go ahead.
So I'll take the one that looks interesting off the wall, and I'll as I'm reading it, I'm moving it around the room to try and find the source of the wind coming in.
Okay. So as you remove the parchment from the wall, you notice that the lyrics are very similar to that which you've found scrawled onto the wall itself. But with a few like notable exceptions. So I'm gonna move another item over to your missing persons and evidence. So let me open it up to you guys so that y'all can see it. So that should pop into your missing persons and evidence. And it's the same song but with different. The music is the same but the lyrics are different. There's some sketch marks of showing like where certain notes hit, but the words are different than what's on the wall. And you can take a look at the lyrics and stuff at your leisure there. Now, as you're kind of moving around and you're looking for a source to this, once you have the document in your hand, the stirring stops.
Like all of them stop moving?
Yeah, all of them stop moving.
Put it back. Does they start again?
Jeet,
No,
jeet.
no, it doesn't. So you're kind of dealing with that there. So Rigo, for you, as you're kind of searching around, finding more information, you're moving through like a few different like areas of paper, but you go over to another corner of the room. It's kind of the one that's behind the door and away from it, and there's a certain level of like organization here. There's like little cubbies with scrolls that have been folded in or rolled up and put into them. But there's also an easel that's there that looks like she uses odds and ends, like different mediums to do painting. But yeah, so you've seen that. But there's one scroll that's been put into a cubby that seems to, that particular cubby has something draws your eye. There's like a glint or something that kind of piques your interest. And as you grab that, you find it's a drawing. It's not. It doesn't look like it was painted. I mean, you actually can look on the easel and see if it was either her or somebody else, whoever painted this. It's a completely different style, but it is a. It looks like it is a drawing of an old city. And there's a river that kind of winds its way through that city and around the city. And it's different than, it might be something different than what you've seen before. But I think if you wanted to study that, you might be able to find some information, which would be like a history check.
Oh yeah, history. Let's see. Boop.
Just Rigo or
If somebody else wants to help, I mean that's actually a fairly fairly good result there. So yeah, so looking at this, you don't quite recognize the place. So what languages do you speak? I forgot to ask, or at least read and write.
Common and Orin.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember there being any relation to it, but it's a language. It's a flowing language that you've maybe seen before, but don't really know it, unfortunately. But the result that you're seeing here is that looks like the River Destin, as far as the way the track is going through.
So I would like to kind of peer over Rigo's shoulder.
Oh yeah.
And my languages are
Dog's
Common,
starting to have-
Draconic, and Celestial.
Dog's having nightmares over here.
Do I understand anything that I see there?
Yeah,
Say that
well,
Vyraxa speaks Common, Draconic, and Celestial. Does she understand anything?
There's a couple of words that are written in Celestial and you're looking at the one that Rigo has, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, there's a couple of words that you see on there that say the music from on high.
Yeah, I will share that little tidbit with Rigo, but this is really all I get out of this, so I can understand. The rest of you, can anyone else? Does anyone else understand the rest of this text? I can see this here. This section here refers to the music on high, but I'm unfamiliar with the other languages.
yeah, I'll gladly hold that out and give my best.
How about
Would
the resident? The resident
performance maybe know that, or history?
Yeah, it's more of a language thing. I mean, history. I mean, if you had like a breakthrough roll on that could be a possibility. But I don't know. If somebody else has the actual language component, then
I'm gonna try to attempt to read it.
okay. And what languages do you speak?
Common, Elvish, and Gnomish.
Okay, Elvish is the language.
I have no idea what languages I know.
You gotta find that out, man. You gotta find that out.
How many do you start with?
I don't
I think
know.
it depends. Like
Common and Dwarven, at least. I would.
Yeah, I would
yeah.
say so. I would say.
And
so,
then
yeah.
depending on like intelligence, I think it's another one maybe potentially.
Yeah. Let's see. It doesn't have anything in the compendium. I was hoping it would have a little thing there.
I can look it up.
But
If I know 3, the third one's whatever is applicable.
so the yeah, so you're able to actually read. You're actually able to read some of the other notations that are on here. But this looks to be a map of this location of Sapphire Harbor. There's a few differences. There's different bridges that are aligned here. There's none of the buildings that you're used to seeing or know in the city are here. But just kind of looking at it, and between Rigo's review of it, you know that this is a pretty old map, like hundreds and hundreds of years old, in fact. And the glint that Rigo had seen appears to be some kinds of runes of protection on the map that you're able to you're able to actually translate the language there that actually spells out the mixtures of magics and stuff that have been put on here to help preserve the document.
Interesting. All right, so is there anything about this map that would be helpful to this is a map of where we are, but what do I know that's different about this map in comparison to what a map would be like today?
Well, kind of what I was saying about the buildings. There's none of the buildings that like if you were to think about the places you've been to in the city, right? You could probably look at it geographically and see that spot on this map, but none of the buildings that exist there are there. So it's a time before Sapphire Harbor was here.
How long has Sapphire Harbor been here?
Sapphire Harbor.
Ish.
Let's see here.
It's a pretty ancient city.
I have to go back and consult my own notes. What the heck? And the audience is
have all
actually
the
seeing this.
details in your head.
I should turn this off so the audience can't see it. That's what I should do. I'm gonna switch this back to the shared screen. So yeah, so this dates back over 800 years.
Okay. Question. Does that 800 years match the time of the era of that music that we heard earlier, or is it a different?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I remember what I was telling you before, yeah, it does match up.
So
at least in the time frame when that music would be used.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm just gonna point that out to the group that this map has got to be at least 800 years old, or represent the what was here at least 800 years ago, because Sapphire Harbor's been around at least that long, and that matches up with the information or the era from the music that we heard earlier. So we're looking at some very some ties to some very old information here, and it's making me slightly concerned. I'm not sure what's going on, but that might be a tie-in to those ghosts we were talking about earlier.
You said there was a sketch on the front of the paper. What was that of?
The one that you had of the lyrics?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a sketch of a silhouette of a figure, kind of a thinnish figure, like they're backlit, that sort of thing. And they're standing kind of like almost in a triumphant pose where they're holding on to some object in their right hand. You can't quite make it out, but they're just kind of like standing, like they're, like just kind of this regal, almost triumphant pose, standing there. And at the bottom, there's kind of like this stylized V that's been drawn. It kind of gives it like this kind of like interesting, I don't know, almost. I don't know. Actually, give me an insight check on that. Just give me an insight check on that one.
Insight.
V for vendetta.
Oh, I don't know nothing.
Oh my goodness.
I was looking at really hard. Do I get advantage?
Well, are you guys both looking at it? It sounds like, so you could kind of Oh my gosh, everything's this is just
Okay, wait,
terrible.
hang on, hang on.
We're getting all the
What, you
bad
say
rolls out of the
insight?
way.
Insight?
Why are you looking at paper?
Before
We're all-
before
we're
the
all just
troll before the
doofuses.
troll harmonica
What the
player shows
heck?
up, you're
Goodness
getting all the
gracious,
bad rolls out of the way.
Man,
I
that's pretty impressive.
think
Maybe if we add them all together, we might be good.
well, I'm thinking that what's happening here is that you guys are all kind of looking at it. I mean, maybe Skaud, maybe you might have pulled them over and given yourself advantage to give yourself a 13 there. So
Sure.
I will
that's what he
go
did.
with that. I will go with that.
Yay.
So you're looking at the drawing. So what are you trying to discern again? Like, I remember.
I didn't know what it was.
I remember now. Excuse me, audience. I'm keeping up with myself. So the insight what you're kind of drawing from this is that there is a certain measure of whoever drew this doesn't really know what this figure looks like or hasn't seen this figure in a long time. Hence the reason they've stayed in like a silhouette. But in not knowing what the figure may look like, they may have been trying to idolize it a bit, like they're paying respect or homage to this figure, and especially with that V at the bottom, it's definitely like saying, hey, wow, look at this. Almost kind of like what you would do when you're doodling in your notebook and you're doodling like your favorite movie star or something like that or whatever.
Usually with spaceships.
Or spaceships, yeah, and you're like, this is the Super Rocket 47, that kind of thing.
Are we gonna find her middle school binder that says Mrs. Palatheria Axburner?
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. In the ancient days.
No,
At least
is
she's
it-
my son. No, I'm kidding.
Is V like it's a person's name? V something?
I don't know. I mean, you guys can study this a little bit more just to try and find more information. It's up to you. I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to find more information about what you have there. I mean, you can give it a shot. Who knows? I mean, if somebody's helping you, but I mean, how do you guys discuss this amongst yourselves? What are you talking about when you all of a sudden you guys are huddled around this drawing? So what's the conversation look like?
Is it V for Vyraxa? Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing, but
The V.
Oh, I'm absolutely minor illusioning a couple little hearts when ooh.
I'm kind of thrown off by this. I'm not quite sure what we've got going on here.
I don't see
Yeah, no.
V's anywhere else, so maybe
Can
when we
I,
run across a
So this physical drawing, can I, if it's a physical item, can I cast identify? Can I cast relative pitch? I think
on the drawing itself, or the paper and everything.
on the drawing itself.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I'm gonna bring up identify for my own reference.
You choose one object that you must touch throughout the casting of the spell. If it is a magic item or some other magic imbued object, you must learn its properties and how to use them. You learn whether any spells are affecting the item and what they are.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? That might be. Oh no, that is identify. Okay.
All right. Let's see.
I renamed it relative pitch.
Yeah,
Nice.
I
I like that. All right. You're.
paper.
Yeah.
It sure
what?
is paper.
Made of pulp.
Here's the thing though, is that sometimes, and this happens a lot in your musical experience, and you've put a lot of passion into your musical theory, Anghyseinedd. So this might kind of, no pun intended, maybe it is. This might resonate with you. When you're identifying this paper, and maybe you're kind of running your fingers along it, and when your hand rests, your fingers kind of brush along the V, there's no magic in this paper whatsoever, but there is such an extreme amount of passion that's been put into the drawing of this letter V that it's actually it's almost left a resonance of the magic that either was in this person's hand or at this person's disposal, and it's definitely a necromantic school of magic. that's within this.
Hmm.
But it's really it's interesting because maybe it's something you might not have seen, or if you have, I would love to hear it, and you can make up whatever you want. But it's normally folks will imbue magic into physical objects by focusing on that object, and then you carve a rune into it, and that imbues the magic into it. But the magic
Right.
stopped; it didn't imbue into the paper; it stayed within the letter itself.
Hmm.
Spooky.
So, yeah, that so I definitely sense something. So I basically communicate to my band. She's really clearly into necromancy, and it really somehow there is some sort of rune cast into this, but I'm not. It's not really there anymore. And I'm a little bit confused as to why, because usually this is a very typical thing that I would be able to detect and understand. But the fact that it's gone is very suspicious.
You think they were trying to cast a spell on this person?
Yeah. Well, yeah, technically. Wait a minute. Yeah. Because usually when you touch a rune and you don't really know what you're touching, something happens. So she must have gotten this spell. She might have been under some sort of curse or something.
Okay. So how do the rest of you react with this?
Does it feel creepy now?
Spooky.
Well, I don't know. What's your thought on? I mean, I saw your reaction, and I'm assuming this is Skaud's reaction when he mentioned necromancy. So, I mean, is there something in your past, that sort of thing that? And we touched on it last episode. Entering into the room, knowing who the Pale is, what she does, the rumors of who she tries to contact or whatever.
Dun, dun, dun.
Right. So, how does that sit with Skaud? What's going on in his head?
There was one time in the war where some necromancy was used, and that was pretty creepy.
Yeah. What was the result? Were they?
Well, it bolstered the army for a while, but then it ended badly when the bad guys were gone, or the enemy was gone.
I like the story potential there. It's pretty cool. So how about Vyraxa? She's been quiet for the last few moments.
I'm not necessarily opposed to the use of necromancy. I'm all about knowledge and skill. So I would understand Pale's desire to learn I would assume that Pale is using these spells and this communication with ghosts of the dead or whoever to learn, because that's what I would do in her shoes. So I'm kind of intrigued actually by this connection to this ancient person or whatever. That's the focus that I've got on right now as wow. I wonder what information she could have learned from someone who's this ancient, and my mind's kind of spinning in those directions, not necessarily thinking about how this could go very badly. It's more about, wow, it's all about the knowledge and the things that I could learn and how that could benefit me. So I'm in understanding that part of her, and not really seeing any, initial downside to it at this point.
Right.
So I'm intrigued.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Cool. I like that. I can work with that. So all right. So who else? I think Rigo's been quiet for the moment. What?
Yeah, I do want to make an Arcana check based on what he said about that V sort of spell, because maybe this is a spell that has already been activated and used.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, Rigo has basically been raised on cradle stories of how this exact sort of thing can go horribly wrong.
Right. No, I got you.
So it's like, oh,
Let's see. So, kind of
that
taking a
was a
look at.
cruddy Arcana check.
It's not terrible. It's not the bee's knees, but it's not terrible. So I think that wipes any ink off his fingers and hands it to Rigo. Nice.
I'm still stuck on the comment before that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, necromancy. Nice. So I think that in looking at this and just kind of like understanding that, yeah, you know, from Anghyseined's understanding that it's necromancy, that sort of thing, there's not the symbols that are drawn around the letter V, okay, they're practice runes, and you're not quite sure like what they're for. They're definitely necromantic symbols, that's for sure, but they're practice runes for something, and that something is the letter V. There's a focus on that, so that it's almost kind of like like you have like you're at an elevator and there's all these arrows that are pointing towards the floor 12, push floor 12, that kind of thing. And that's kind of the vibe you get, that the runes are dedicated towards this particular symbol in the middle, but they're practice runes for something you're not sure what.
I'm envisioning a child stitching sampler. And you keep saying practice runes, like we're practicing doing our spell.
Oh my gosh, what have I done?
For what's it called? For whatever the interpret languages spell is. I do have
languages?
Yeah, I do have that, but it says this spell doesn't decode secret messages in a text or a glyph such as an arcane sigil that isn't part of a written language.
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
Dang it. Is that what I wanted to show off the name for? I have all the names now, and they're all hilarious. And
so you're just gonna have to start casting things randomly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So,
okay.
I have good taste in music. Dang it!
That's
I want to show it off.
Heck yeah. Well, that's the thing. I want to get towards like where we're building off the strengths and feeding off the strengths of one another. So that's good. All right. So who's so what to now? You've found this map. You found the lyrics on the wall, but then you found the lyrics that are on the back of this page.
And did we identify the differences?
Yeah, I was gonna see what.
Yeah. Well, let's do this.
Why there's a difference?
Yeah, and do we? So clearly we can identify what the differences are. We can compare and contrast.
Right.
Do we see, or what could I roll to see if those differences stood out to me for some reason, or caught my attention for some reason?
Right.
Now, if it caught your attention, I'd probably say that's perception.
I mean, perception would be just kind of like the general search of it, but like an investigate would be
okay,
kind of like a discernment of it.
Okay. Haha, that's not bad.
Oh wow, you critted it. First crit of the
I know
evening.
all the freaking things.
You know all the things.
All the things.
You look into the song, and through it, you see through time.
Oh,
Case closed. I know exactly where she is.
Who writes a song in plaid? I don't understand. Okay, so
I didn't know Pale was into ska.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, grunge is more plaid. Checkerboard is more ska. I gotta get my genres in check.
Speedo. All right, so
genre.
I've actually, what you can do, and this could be for all of you. You guys can open up both handouts. You should have both of the Don't Cry handouts in your folders.
I'm gonna start singing it.
So you can kind of open them up and put them side by side. So the one that is titled Don't Cry Alt is the one that's on the wall, and the one that's titled Don't Cry Original is the one that's on the paper. So yeah, so I mean, you can kind of take a look at the differences in the lyrics there. the one that's the kind of the alternative one seems like more of a lament or a goodbye to a lover. The other one seems, and obviously I'm kind of going off the investigation here. The other one seems more of a I have to go because you're crazy type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Um,
washing the blood off your hands. That's pretty cryptic.
Yeah, like what are you
Yeah.
getting into? Why do I, I can't stay here. I can't stay with you because of that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so I see the differences. So one,
And I think
the one on the
I think like
go ahead.
actually when you get, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I apologize.
That's okay. Keep going.
I was gonna say that when you get down to the lyrics, I know the things you wanted, they're not what you have. And with all the people talking, it's driving you mad. I think when you get to that, and maybe, I don't know, one of you might be reading through it or mutter it or something like that. I think for Skaud, you hear like whispers in your ear and like kind of like a cold chill brush across your neck.
Oh my.
Oh, what was that? Who did something?
Rigo's breathing on your neck.
Ah,
Caca.
Okay.
So
Can
so sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No,
I'm
go
gonna.
ahead.
I'm gonna. Are you okay? I sense it, and I'm like, dude, something's up. You got to tell me now what's up.
I'd say I felt like a chill. Who was reading it out loud? Or just
I'll say I was, because I was the one really looking at it carefully.
when Vyraxa read that verse or whatever, as if my character doesn't know what he's talking about. Read that verse, I felt a chill.
Okay. Can I? Okay, so read. I'm
Roll
gonna
a chill
actually
check.
probably. I'm gonna still chill. I'm gonna look at the what's on the wall and see why that's not there, because I don't see that lyric on the wall.
Right.
Something's not right. I'm wondering if the timing of when this written version was written as opposed to what was on the wall, if there's like a timeline for when one or the other was written.
So
Okay.
would we know, maybe would we recognize what was the actual original song versus what was a modified version of the song?
Would I have to pull into my elven culture for that, possibly?
Or read the
Bingo.
handout and idle.
Yeah, definitely. Anghyseinedd right on the head.
Okay.
Do you want to? Let's see. What would that look
You want me to
like?
roll a
That'd be-
history check?
Yeah,
history check would be a good one, I think.
I think that would do
right.
it.
All right, I'll do history.
I think that would do it. Yeah.
History of song lyrics.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oof.
But he's elven, so maybe he gets advantage.
Maybe?
That's a good
Well, I can
argument.
read it.
That's a good argument.
Or not?
Your thing. Yeah, actually, I can give you a quick one here, and that the version that is on the wall, the one that's the one that I gave you guys for the first version there, is not exactly structured like an old elvish lament. I mean, it's close, but when you're thinking about your history, and I think especially with Rigo when he brought in some of that information, I think that it's not quite as rock solid and dead on as a elvish lament or form, whereas the other one seems to be more in line.
So it's
with.
a fake lament.
It's a fake. Guys, this is a fake.
So do we think?
And I screwed up with the title of these handouts too. So anyway, never mind.
So Vyraxa, to the rest of the group, based on what we're seeing, do we think that Pale was rewriting some of these songs, or are we going in the wrong direction here? Maybe retrieving some information from the past and then using that to develop, a new version of the song, or do you feel like there's something else going on?
I think the necromancy might have affected affected the version, because I would say that probably the original was, since the original was handwritten, maybe she kind of went mad in a sense, and the new version, the fake version, is kind of as a result of her dealings with necromancy.
What do the rest of you guys think?
Scratching at my neck. It's like, hey, it's so creepy in here.
Rigo squawks.
Yeah.
I felt
I'm
that.
not quite
Kind
sure.
of ruffles up his feathers.
Yeah,
I felt that.
What the heck? I just clicked something. Dang it. Come back. Here we go. All right.
All right. So what to do now with this? What are you thinking?
We could ask the guy.
I was going to
'Cause-
suggest going back to our boss guy.
Yeah.
Seeing if he
Linkah,
knows
go
anything
to
about
You know
Linkah.
who
it.
this is?
Does he see if he sees anything familiar? Does he
Mm.
recognize the music? Has he heard Pale talking about it before? Anything that we could go on here?
Right.
Does he have any knowledge of necromancy in general? Is that something he's aware of, or is there maybe somebody who we know who would be aware of the depths of where necromancy can go?
Well, I do think at least Linkah might have an idea about that symbol, because I mean it's not like there's the runes around it, but the symbol itself isn't necessarily magic. It might correspond to something else,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like that's something I can get across just by when Link is mentioned, I can just tap the symbol.
Okay. So you wanted to be the one to talk to him?
Walk to him.
Fuck.
Squawk to me, baby.
Nice.
Wah.
It works. It works. It works. It works.
Wah, wah.
So, all right.
about
So,
that.
so I think so. Like, what are you guys taking with you? Are you taking with you the map and the
Yeah,
I
alternate
wanted to look
lyrics
at the
or
Any
map.
printed material that we had, that's for sure.
it definitely. I would,
Yeah, I can roll those up and pack them away with the scrolls I got from Linkah.
Okay.
So they were reading the lyrics. I was looking at the map, and was there anything pointed out? Obviously, I'm assuming there's no giant X. But is there anything
X
where?
marks
With my
spot.
insight roll, something better be jumping out.
Right there. Drop
It's
there.
right there.
Oh my gosh! Totally forgot him. No. Let me go off of your.
Yay!
See,
We solved
you
the
rolled
mystery.
Yeah, you rolled a. Was it the 22 that you rolled on
Yes,
investigating
the
the map?
crit.
Is that the one?
Yep.
So that was
Yeah.
yours for Vyraxa. I was looking at Skaud's as well. He had a 22 back there, but I think that was when he was looking at the.
That
lyrics,
was
I
looking
think.
for
Yeah,
papers and.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What she said.
So
Agreement.
I think, yeah. So I mean, you're looking at the map, and perhaps like the rest of you might be helping, that sort of thing. And as you're looking at it, you're again, it's just there's geographic context where you can say, oh well, this is the inlet that leads towards high water. Right, that's the low rent district. That's where all the yard yard workers and the warehouse dealers and the sailors and all that stuff. All of them kind of work down there, and most of them live down there as well.
So
It's
even
kind of a
though we don't
seedier
have
part
the
of town.
buildings I'm able to recognize where things are.
Yeah, on a basic level, you can kind of
Okay.
recognize things just simply because, well, okay, I mean, this
I
is
mean, with the
over here.
with the river, we basically have a sense of scale.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
you can kind of match up some things here and there when it comes to the map and that sort of thing. So, I mean, yeah, there's that part. There is kind of like a big structure in the middle of the map that kind of draws your attention, I think, and
Okay.
that structure It's got the feeling of like a temple of some kind.
Is it still there now?
Let's see. So let me ask this: how well traveled are you in the city? I think we
Well,
talked
I've
about
lived
it a
here
little
for
bit.
years.
I'm much newer, so I think I'm the newest to the city out of everyone. Is that right? Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, I was thinking like 5-10 years probably.
Okay. And you're kind of like you do things. I mean, you go around the city. You've traveled a bit. You've done
Yeah.
some session work here and there.
You do
that sort
things.
of thing, right? You do things. You do things around the city. Let's do this. Let's bring you guys over to the city map. Do that.
Ooh.
So you guys will be here.
There's a
So you may
map
have to
of
kind
the
of zoom in a little bit.
city.
Again, this is a map of Venice in medieval times, but I just
No,
like
it's not.
it's a nice.
Sapphire Harbor.
It's Sapphire Harbor, you scoundrels. And let me do this. I will add a marker here. Blammo. There we go.
Blammo.
So do that. Let me add a little aura to it because I realized when I made the token that it was a little bit on the faint side when it came to this map. So I'll add a little, in honor of your glam rockness, I'll add some purple to it. So, yeah. So the location that you're seeing on the map kind of lines up with this part of the city right here. Oh, I've got the grid turned on here, and that's
Okay, I looked real quickly and I thought that the token was a hot air balloon moving through the city.
Uh,
It kind of looks like that when you glance.
it's all kind of floating around.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so right about there is where you're seeing that structure on the map. Now, what you know about that location at this point is that it is it's a place where a library is held. There's a big library that's there at this stage and or this time frame, and in that library is basically like histories of the various regions of peoples who have arrived here. They bring their histories and they go there, and that's kind of where they do a lot of sharing of information, including musical history. That's also there as well.
So Vyraxa would have stopped there at some point pretty early on in her visit.
for
to the
sure.
city.
There you go. Yeah, so it's a
Very,
place.
very much something that she'd be interested in.
Yeah, so you probably actually have somebody that you know that you could talk to there. That's
And Rigo probably needs something for the bottom of his cage, so library's a good place.
And on that bombshell.
I give you the most offended squawk that I can possibly summon.
Yes, yes.
Can I
Hey!
He
Can I-
says, "I'm not crate trained."
Hey! Get along!
I am rolling performance to see how disproving my squawk is.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I had a sailor in one game, and most I used the seafaring roll to swear.
That's right.
That's awesome.
So,
You crit fail, and you're basically just like, oh, duty.
Darn.
Gosh
think
darn
I'll
it to HE double hockey sticks.
so I think so on the comparison of the older map to what you know of the city, that the structure that's there, this kind of large looking temple type structure, it's got this kind of almost like a venue type feel to it. I mean, you guys are all band people, you're all performers and stuff, so you kind of know this, but it has kind of like a venue feel to it.
Okay.
But yeah, so apparently back in that time, that was what was there, but now there's that library currently.
So it wasn't always a library.
Right. I mean, it
wasn't in a library 800 years ago.
Yeah.
800 years ago. Yeah. That's right.
Okay. So interesting. Former venue, now library.
Or temple venue. I don't know.
Yes. Temple venue. It's even better. Okay. So are we going to chat with Linkah, or are we doing something else?
I feel like what we need to do more than chat with him is we need to bring him to the room, because it would be kind of important for him to see the lyrics on the wall. That's one of the most important things we need to show him, is that we found two versions.
Where's your iPhone? Give me your iPhone. We'll just
I
take a
know,
picture.
right? I'm like, can we just like sketch something real quick? No. Okay. I mean, he sent us to investigate, so if we want to bring him, we can. But I figure we could just report and get some information. But I don't feel like really strongly about it. So that would be my suggestion to the group. And if you guys have another idea, then Vyraxa's kind of contented to go along with that.
Okay, sounds good. So we kind of like diagonal wipe, and you guys are heading back down. You're at the door to Linkah's office, and he, as is customary, he leaves it open for the most part. So he's at his desk, and he's talking with a quartet of individuals, and he's just wrapping up, and he looks over one of their shoulders, or at least around their shoulder, because he's diminutive of stature, and he waves you all in towards the there's like a little couch area that's next to the fireplace, and he's just kind of waves you over there, and so he wraps up with these folks and sends them on their way. Nice. And he and from what you understand, you recognize these four here before. They're singers, another band that's that's part of the troupe de Incroyable. So,
and Vyraxa thinks that she's seen them. I've seen them before, but I'm just so much better than them.
Sure. So
that's what I do.
So after they exit, he follows them to the door, and he closes the door, and he turns back and he says, "So tell me, have you already found information?"
Yeah. The moment he's saying that, I'm whipping out that scroll with the picture on it, and I'm
he ducks back now. Just kidding.
And I'm pointing out that V symbol.
Is that a V for victory? What am I looking at here? And he
I give him my best "you tell me" shrug.
Nice.
It's an evil V. Evil.
Oh well, is it
Evil.
I mean, is it cursed or something? I don't know. Should I be touching it? Well, I guess you're touching it. And he looks at Rigo and he like eyeballs you, and he's like, "You don't look any different than what I normally see." So very well. And he steps forward and kind of straightens his coat and grabs the paper if you're willing to let him take a look at it. And
Oh yeah.
he looks at the drawing, and
The moment he's holding it, I start going. Ooh.
I thought you were gonna like pretend like you keel over and die, and he'll freak out.
What is this you're doing? What's that noise that you're making?
The sound of ghosts.
Did this come from Palatheria's room?
Yes, it did.
I see.
Yes.
Right, let's
Wondering if you have any
shake out any
insights.
curses here real quick, and then
Like a Polaroid.
and then the silhouette now is a full descriptive. No, I'm just kidding.
It's
a full
Oh, we
face
had
and
to do
everything.
that.
I just had to shake it. It
That's
says
what we
Polaroid on the
do.
top.
It's like one of those magnet things with the iron dust.
Perfect.
Yes.
So
yeah.
he's looking at it, and he says, "Well, he kind of he tries to stand in that same pose or whatever. He's like, well, it's not me, although it's quite dashing. This I don't know. He turns it over in his hand, and he sees, oh, there's lyrics on the other side. Is this? Did you want me to look at this?
Well, these are the lyrics.
Pausing for a second. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Was I?
No, please.
Okay. So we actually saw these when we came into the room. We were kind of introduced to the room by some lyrics that were on the wall. We were reading these lyrics, and it definitely were some really heartfelt lyrics. But then we found this, and it looks very similar. I'm very versed in my elven culture, and I noticed that one of the set of lyrics is definitely different than the other, and I suspect that somehow her involvement with necromancy might have something to do with this. We suspected that necromancy is afoot in this matter.
Yeah, most. Well, I would assume that that's possible. He looks at the. He's reading through the lyrics, and he's hearing you. He's hearing you, Anghyseinedd, and he's listening to what you're saying, but he's like really kind of like reading through the lyrics, like really like reading through it, like he's just looking at it, and he's kind of stroking his chin a bit, and he kind of without looking, kind of knowing the room really well, he goes over to his comfy chair that's in front of the fire, because you guys are kind of gathered on this couch and everything, and he sits down and he says, I've seen these, or at least I've heard these lyrics before. I found them for her, for Palatheria.
You found them for her?
Wait, when was the last time that you actually heard her sing lyrics? And which version did you hear her sing the last time you heard her sing this?
It was a bit different than this. We had a disagreement, but he's kind of like struggling at this moment.
So when you say you found them for her, you found them where?
Did you write them?
Look, Linkah, you've asked us to look into something.
Yes.
And this is the first little tidbit of clue that we found. So I think that you need to be completely clear with us with whatever you know.
I poof my feathers up in as intimidating a manner as I can.
Oh, you
Flutter.
I will kill you. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's freaking awesome. The most intimidating throw ever.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
I'm suddenly bringing the fury of the Raven Queen.
Right, yeah.
You look 10 times taller.
I think like
this is actually gonna be great when I tell my party about this, the one that I'm DMing. Because they have basically just been like headbutting their way through my plot with intimidation rolls.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what is it like? You puffing up your feathers? What does it look like? Do you kind of loom over his chair? Do you like hop up and perch on one of the arms on the chair or something?
Yeah,
what do you do?
Oh yeah, with that intimidation roll, I am like on the desk, talons in the wood.
Well, is it? Well, you're kind of you're in the there's like a coffee table in between you guys, because there's a couch and a couple of chairs
on the coffee table.
Yeah. Okay. So like you're there, and I think maybe like the fire that's in the big fireplace behind you is just kind of backlighting you, right? To where it's just like,
oh yes,
whoosh, So I think he looks up at you and says, "Rigo, please, I'm not." This is embarrassing for me. As a manager, you're not supposed to fraternize with.
Oh dear.
The bands.
I give my best.
Fraternity.
Oh my.
We saw each other for a time. A brief moment, especially in an elvish life, but nonetheless, when I first found her, I was quite smitten, and we courted for a while. But she changed over time. I think maybe she saw me as a distraction from her music. I don't know. She asked me to do a favor for her towards the end. And I thought, well, this would be an opportunity to bring back the love between us and reignite the passion. And I went and I found this for her, and I brought it back. It was difficult to find, but it was okay. It was worth it. But she received it, and she said,
keep it for a night and read the lyrics and think of me. And when I did that, I didn't do anything for her at the time. And unfortunately, it just made me extremely sad when I did.
Did you feel a tingle up your spine?
Well, yes, I did. There was a shudder of fear that I didn't quite understand the waters in which I was swimming. So I took the song and I wrote new lyrics and I sang them to her to end the affair.
You sang about washing her hands of blood. That was your way of ending the
No,
affair.
that's these lyrics here. I rewrote the lyrics because I didn't want to think that.
I was a little confused.
No, that's why I was sad. That's why I was fearful. When you look at the lyrics here, so I rewrote them in a way to a mutual uncoupling, if you will. So I thought we would do that. And I sang this to her, and I think she understood, and we went our separate ways. It's been business ever since. It's been many months. I've seen her less and less. I think she actively avoids me in the halls. But that's why. Please, Rigo, please. I'm telling you everything.
All right, I'll back off at that. I'm just kind of rolling my little my bird eyes.
Yeah. One cannot control where one's heart goes. You are all musicians. You know this. Passion takes you where passion will.
Understood.
Okay. Okay, so... Not sure where this leaves us.
Yeah, really, I don't know either.
As Rigo kind of like steps down, I think he reaches out a hand and grasps your forearm, and he says, "Find her. I don't know what she's up to, what she's into. I fear for her safety. I still care for her. My heart aches for her, but I don't know what she's involved in." And he hands you back the paper. And he says, "Oh, go ahead."
Wait.
The dead are down below, and we need to check the basement.
We don't hold any dead here.
Well, you know.
So, Linkah, now that we know that you had this much closer relationship with Pale, did she? Do you have any firsthand knowledge of exactly what types of necromantic spells that she was involved with, or what she was doing?
I've never really dabbled far into those things, and I'm a halfling. I don't do those. I'm already typical enough being a project manager.
I understand that, but what did you see of if you're so in love with her and spending so much time with her, then clearly you would notice some things.
I know that her heart was never truly mine. I think her heart has been given to another. And
is that person
I
alive?
can tap the sketch.
Okay.
That's possible, yes. When I saw it, I thought, well, maybe she might have drawn me, and I realized, no, that's not my stature.
And he looks over at Anghyseinedd and says,
I know that you're only half, and I don't mean that as a pejorative. I mean that...
Offense taken.
You know that elves have an ancient love. When they bear away their hearts, it's a stronger love than most will ever know because of their lives, their ancient days. So, I'm but a halfling, and I don't presume to have taken any place of anything, but I assume that I was a distraction, and she, I don't know, either she punished herself, or just thought that it needed to end anyway. I think if I had not sung that song, she would have told me in short order that it was over.
We understand. And I understand
Poor
that completely.
broken-hearted Linkah.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. So at this point, I kind of decide the best thing we need to do is to start really getting into, because we really need to do a little more investigation outside of here. So I go to Skaud and I ask, and don't you have the map with you? Somehow we found this map in Hale's room, and it's an older map, but it has a particular location that kind of stands out. Do you mind taking a look at it and see if you can kind of deduce why this would be, what the significance of this place is, and if this is something that Hale would actually be interested in?
Certainly,
Perhaps you've seen it before.
Maybe you actually.
I'll take a look. Sure. So he.
Maybe you found it for her.
No. Yeah. So he looks at it, and you make note of the prominent structure of this kind of like venue temple or whatever venue, whatever it is, and he says, "That's isn't that the Museum of the Harmonies? Is that what that is?"
Is that what it's called now, or is that what?
Well, that's what it's called now. Yeah, that's the place now.
Okay. Yes. We believe that is the Museum of the Harmonies, but not or the same location. But this seems to be a very ancient document.
Yes. He looks at it and says, "It's hundreds of years old, at least to my halfling eyes. Why the interest in this location?"
We found this in her room, and again, we're looking for any indication of where she might have been spending time, what she might have been doing. This is not exactly a normal, everyday thing to find in someone's room, an 800-year-old map.
That's true. I'll be honest, I don't know how old she really is. You never ask a lady's age, that's for sure. But I did find, and he points towards the lyrics. So I did find the copy of those lyrics at the museum.
You know, I'm gonna pull.
Well, I should say a friend of mine found a copy of the lyrics in the museum.
I'm gonna pull the group aside. Just obviously Linkah's going to see that we're discussing, but without necessarily pulling him into the conversation. I'm curious. It sounds like Hale may have had some, love that was why she couldn't be in this relationship with Linkah. And now I'm curious as to whether that may be who she's consorting with. I don't know, but that's what just crossed my mind.
I'm trying to think if I could. I would probably want to do an insight check into. Can I do an insight check into Linkah, just to kind of check his motives a bit further?
Yeah, sure. Is anybody else maybe helping out? I keep forgetting to ask that, so that if you guys wanted to help each other.
Yeah, I can assist on that.
Okay.
Should I roll 2 or?
No, you won't need to. What happens is it gives him advantage.
Okay.
On his roll. So
then ignore my roll.
That's fine. No worries. So 17. That's decent. Pretty good. So you're kind of like looking at his demeanor, and he's still kind of like looking at the lyrics, right? And he seems like pretty worried. Kind of like, what have I done? But like, yeah, he's worried for her. He's truly worried for her. So, I mean, there's obviously a deeper motive into why he's sending you guys to look for her and Krim and Elysian. You know, maybe more of a motive for her in this instance, but yeah, for sure he's worried about her. There's not really a sense of like, oh, don't find out what I've been doing type thing. It's more of like, man, what has she been up to that, you know, that I missed, you know, that I could have warned her off of doing or something like that. She's really worried about what kind of mess she's in.
Okay.
All right. You know what? I think knowing the source of where these lyrics came from might be it might be a good place for us to go. Because I think we've gathered enough information. So what do you guys say that we now proceed to the Museum of Harmonies and investigate?
Well, let's check the catacombs before we leave.
Oh, jeez.
Then we don't have to come back.
What are we checking the catacombs for?
Are there even actually catacombs, or is this just
Isn't
Scott
that
screwing with
where,
us?
what's his name? Krim?
Yeah. So for those who know Krim and may have worked with him, he's kind of like, I guess in modern parlance, he'd be a sound engineer. He does play the harpsichord
Tunnels.
and the flute. Yeah, he's pretty good. But his real passion is in framing sound. And I think it was Anghyseinedd that he'd worked with quite a bit, just because he enjoyed how you liked the dissociative chord progressions, but then he liked how it kind of like matched and melded with the sounds he was looking for. So yeah, Krim, on occasion you can take a look at his info card there in the journal. On occasion he will head down into what's called the Rainbow Tunnels beneath the city.
Gotcha.
There is a couple of access points here at Marami's home. The kind of like that four-story building that you guys are in right now that you reside in. So there's a couple of access points here. He's obviously, I mean, there's probably other access points throughout the city.
I thought it was like the tunnels were right below here.
Yeah,
Isn't
you can
that-
access them right below here for sure. For sure.
So
Yeah.
we as a group turn to the rest of you? Do we think that Krim's disappearance is connected to Pales, or do we think this is something separate?
It might be timing wise, you know. I mean, it seems odd that all of a sudden, why all of them seem to have disappeared at the same time might have some sort of correlation. But
I mean, it definitely is odd. I'm just not sure that I don't know that we've come up with some sort of connection, or are we just making the assumption that there's a connection? And that's, you know,
Let me-
to
well, I
you
can-
all.
Yeah, I can literally just like since I have the missing scrolls, I can just use Mage Hand and swing all those open for us in character.
Nice.
Stage hand. That's awesome.
ah,
It's the only one that isn't a song title, but I just
I was either thinking
I
that
had to go with the pun.
I was either thinking that or you were going to go jazz hands. So, I didn't know which one you were going to go
Jazz wings.
with. Yeah. So jazz talons. Okay. So what are you doing here now? You're just kind of looking them all.
That was just me showing off, but I literally have the scrolls, so we can maybe do insight or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So I'll do an insight as well. Let's see
I
here.
think that works.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to assist me in my insight roll?
Yeah, I was already gonna roll insight,
Okay.
so
Well, there you go. I'll assist you.
All right.
What do you
Well,
do?
I mean that would have given her advantage, so that works.
Okay, so there you are.
So yeah, so 18.
Good. I'm glad you were rolling because that was not good for me.
So yeah, you're looking at the three of them, kind of like they're kind of floating in the air, right between the four of you, and Linkah is still kind of like looking at the words on the lyrics. He's kind of like looking through them at this point. He's just kind of seeing that, right? He's just off in his broken heartland.
okay, sad
And-
boy can go be sad. Let's investigate.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Emo.
So you're looking at this and you're thinking that there's the Pale, she studies, old music. She studies, she sings like pretty much nobody else in the city, right? It's just a different style. she has the ability to hit the scales like super fast, and about the only vocal presence in the city, at least that's known now, that can keep up with Alishan's shredding skills. There's, they've worked together before, so you know that. They've been on a few gigs together. Krim usually will arrange sound for them. But and maybe it's just a sense of how the pages are kind of like floating in the air, right? That you're reading into this, Rigo. So what other connection are you looking for here? I mean, what's your emotional or your intellectual tie-in to this?
I mean, I'm definitely seeing like there is a puzzle here. Like these, like there is definitely a reason why these three would disappear at the same time.
Right.
And
I think it all. Oh, go ahead.
I would say I would be looking for any sort of similarity in where they were last seen, or the last time they were together, or who any of their known associates are, or anything that jumps out at me that says that there's some linkage other than the fact that we all work for Linkah. So what linkage is there between these various musicians?
Well, there is one thing that I noticed, but I'm not sure like if it's in character.
Right.
Because that V, I did notice that Elysian has a steam-powered flying V lyre.
Okay. All right. That's not a huge out of character leap, but yeah, maybe that's something that kind of ties in.
So like, could that maybe somehow indicate him?
Well, the shape of the silhouette is not, it's not a gnoll, for sure. So it's not the hyena shaped skull, right? But I mean, you're kind of like, you're looking at it, and maybe like you take the page that has a picture of Elysian with his guitar, right?
Yeah, I'm not looking, snatching the picture back from emo halfling.
There we go.
Emo halfling.
That's his new name.
Emo halfling.
People don't care to know Rigo's name. He doesn't care to know theirs.
That's right.
He can kind of just hold that up and be like,
emo half link.
Nice. So yeah, you kind of like are turning the picture, and let me switch back over to our game board so the folks at home can see the picture of Elysian Haxburner. So that you kind of turn the picture a little bit over, and the V shape actually is pretty close. It's pretty close, and the drawing here of Elysian is with his favorite guitar, and ironically enough, the one guitar that he hasn't burst into flames. And it's the one guitar that you know of that Krim has spent the most time with.
Okay, so there's linkage between them, but that doesn't necessarily tell us what we need to know. But they are linked, and we as a group, correct me if I'm wrong, but we as a group are assuming that their disappearances are connected.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So in that case, I have no objection to looking in the tunnels while we're here before we head across the city.
Yeah,
to see if we find anything.
Since they're definitely in closer proximity, and plus I am comfortable around gnomes.
Okay.
I know many gnomes actually, because my parents introduced me to a lot of gnomes growing up. So I actually learned their language. I speak Gnomish. So if these are not like the gnomes that I encountered, I will know. I will know that they are not gnomes to be gnomes with.
Okay.
They're gnomeless.
Well,
No less.
they're gnomeless. So I'll do. Let's do this. It has, I think, Anghyseinedd, you said that you'd gone into the tunnels before with Krim, or was it one of the others that did that?
I have. He's worked on
Skaud.
my.
Oh, that's right. He
Guitar.
was working on your guitar. That's right. So I think like you guys, who here may know or not know certain things about the underworld in Sapphire Harbor?
Probably not me.
Not me, definitely.
I might know. I might know a little. I'm at a.
Well, I'm thinking of that whole Raven Queen connection, maybe. And then Skaud, how about you?
I would imagine I've been down there.
Okay.
Looking around.
All right. So what I'll have you do is, I think what we'll do is we'll go to break here. I think this will be a good point to kind of stop. And I think maybe you guys, we follow you guys out as you're leaving leaving Marami's home and heading over to an alley that you know. But I think Skaud, maybe you've been down this direction before, where you know that there's an opening to the rainbow tunnels beneath you. And as you're kind of making your way there, I think what happens is there's like we will follow you down this alley, and you get to this kind of like this grate that has it looks like it's got stone and stuff that's kind of like embedded into the iron of the grate. But you've seen Krim work this before. You've seen him do a special little combination of exactly, and you hear like this kind of this type sound and cranking wheel, from a sprocket or something that's right beneath your feet, and you feel it kind of vibrating through your boots or through your taloned feet as you're standing there. And the grate just kind of like the bars start to slide away. Instead of the grate moving, it's just the bars along the grate start to slide away until it creates an aperture and you can go down there. And we see light kind of shine down. We traverse, as an audience, we traverse down to the bottom of or into the tunnels, let's say. And the light, there's suddenly this burst of light, like a spotlight, and it lands on the form of a short-statured individual who's got this tall stovetop hat, like an Abraham Lincoln hat, right? And we just see kind of like a darkened silhouette, a little bit of feature here and there of kind of like a rough-faced individual, gnomish featured face. And he's got this long cigarette that's kind of hanging out, and there's like this burning ember. We see him inhale, and it kind of burns a little bit. We see his eyes kind of light up a bit. And then as we kind of pan back, we see that he's got this guitar that's kind of like low slung to him. And
I was about to say,
it's like
spooky figure in a top hat. I was thinking he was the Babadook.
No, but it's like real low slung. I mean, on a gnome, he's pretty short, but he's a hard rock gnome. And it's a face that maybe one or two of you might have seen before. But he starts to kind of pluck at the E string of his guitar, the low end, and then he looks up at the light that's shining down on him, and he looks around, and as he says something, his voice echoes in like an arena type of amphitheater type thing, and he says, "Rush rock." And all of a sudden, we see all these eyes kind of like light up all around the rim of this amphitheater, and we bring the episode to a close on that interesting note. So I want to say thanks to these spectacular individuals around me here for this. It's a different feel from the other group, and it's a great feel. I like the differences, how you guys are approaching things. There's different investigative natures and different threads that you're pulling on, so I like it. So this is very cool. I'm loving the differences so far. So this has been
Cthulhu investigating.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to make sure we don't go insane. So this has been episode 2.1 of this session. So we'll have a second session that we're going to record here pretty quick. So you guys will notice that we'll be wearing the same clothes. But we will we'll have that or not. Maybe we get into pajamas. Maybe I'll just go change on purpose now.
But here.
That's right. I'm changing. So. Thanks a lot for being here. This has been it's an experiment for InnRoads. It's something that I wanted to try and do I want to bring out the narrative more, and knowing that, characters kind of have to build off of the interlinking skills and abilities that they may have. When you narrow the scope down to a single class, sometimes it can make it more difficult. but I think it can make it a lot more fun. There was kind of like a discussion I had on Twitter about how if you're going to be in a group of bards, are you really going to fling them into a dragon's horde, right? Are you going to fight a dragon with a group of bards? Unless they're level 20, probably not. But you are going to potentially do things like this: investigations, performances, madcap adventures, that sort of thing. So that's what kind of gave me the desire to do this little experiment. But thanks for sticking with us. We'll be back with a new episode probably in a few days here, just to kind of give you guys a chance to see this before we move on to the next. But thanks for being here. As always, get your own band together, strike a few chords, play some games, make some new friends. This is the venue in which to do it. RPGs are a fantastic way to do that. So get thee to a table. We shall see you all on the flip side.